Hello, Grace. It is April the 2nd, and welcome back to Cover to Cover. We're covering Judges chapter 7, 1, all the way through to 9:21. So, when Gideon's story begins, he is very similar to Moses. He's reluctant and he's hiding from his enemies. And then, after destroying this altar to Baal, the Spirit of Yahweh clothes itself with Gideon. That's chapter 6, verse 34. And Gideon begins to summon the nation, beginning with his own clan. But even here, he asks God twice for a sign that God is going to deliver Israel. In chapter 7, we're on the eve of battle, and the first thing God says when the battle approaches is, "You have too many men." So 32,000 becomes 10,000, and that becomes 300. And the text gives us the reason real plainly. If you go in with an army, you'll win and you'll tell yourselves that you did it. So the reduction is not a strategy. It's a statement about whose victory this is. And then 300 men with torches and clay jars shout out in the dark, and the Midianite camp, it just collapses in on itself. And nobody could credit this to a general. And that's the point. Yahweh is king, and Gideon is a man with a clay jar and a torch. But Gideon fails nearly as quickly as God raised him up, as we see coming up. During the battle, he's slighted by the cities of Penuel and Sukkoth. They refuse to give him bread as him and his troops are in pursuit of Zebah and Zalmunna. They demand proof of the capture of the kings before they're willing to help. And recall that Gideon, after the Spirit empowered him, still demanded a sign from God twice. In cold irony, Gideon vows vengeance upon them. Here he punishes the cities of Sukkoth and Penuel for the very same failure of faith that he exhibited before God. Israel cried out for deliverance from their Midianite captors, and before the battle is even over, Israelite towns are being tormented by their own deliverer. Gideon fails to give them the grace for their unbelief, the same grace that God had afforded him for his own failure of belief. But wait, it gets worse. At the conclusion of the battle in chapter 8, the people say to Gideon, "Rule over us and become our king, you and your son and your grandson." Gideon's response seems to be sincere, and even genuine and possibly even faithful. He replies, "I will not rule over you. My son will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." But what he does next betrays his intention. He takes 1,700 shekels of gold as tribute. He then fashions a golden ephod from that tribute, and we'll get back to that. He acquires a harem in his hometown of Ophrah, and he sires 70 sons. And then he has a concubine in Shechem who gives him another son, which he names Abimelech. Translated, this name means, "My father is king." Gideon refuses kingship, but he possesses all the material benefits of royalty. In chapter 6, verse 34, we read that the Spirit clothed itself with Gideon. Gideon is the garment worn by the Spirit in that instance. In chapter 8, verse 27, Gideon creates an ephod of gold. It is a garment, and it becomes a snare to Gideon and his family. The word snare is used in Judges to denote idolatry. It talks about worshiping pagan gods and taking pagan wives and them becoming a snare. In the ancient Near East, there was a practice of covering idols with holy garments. And so many scholars argue that in chapter 8, verse 33, as we're reading, where it says that Israel returned to worship Baal, that Gideon's ephod was made specifically to clothe an idol to Baal. Gideon has immediately rejected God in the same breath where he said that God will rule over his people. In the following chapter, we see the situation escalate with Abimelech. Abimelech persuades his kinfolk in Shechem to help him kill his 70 brothers in Ophrah. They fund his venture with silver from the temple titled Baal Berith, which means covenant with Baal. Only Jotham, the youngest brother, escapes. Jotham climbs Mount Gerizim and utters a parable. Now, Gerizim is noted in Deuteronomy and in Joshua as this mountain, as the site of covenant blessing. And it here becomes the site where Jotham pronounces judgment on Abimelech and on all those who would choose Abimelech to be their king.